The air inside the penthouse was cold, but not from the climate control. It was the chill of sterile, unchecked wealth, amplified by the vast panes of glass that made up the external walls of the 65th floor. Clara Jenkins moved across the polished white marble floor with the practiced, silent efficiency of a shadow. Her plain, slightly faded blue uniform was a stark smudge of humility against the blinding backdrop of a minimalist, luxury Chicago skyscraper. She wasn't just cleaning, she was performing an anxious ballet, every wipe and straighten designed to be invisible. But her mind was elsewhere, darting to the cheap, vibrating phone tucked deep inside her apron pocket, a daily check-in from the daycare, a notification about an overdue bill, a quiet fear she couldn't outrun. The silence shattered when the elevator door chimed. Elijah Reid, the man known globally as Eli, the CEO of Ascension Tech, entered like a force field. He was power personified, tall, perfectly fit, and dressed in a suit that probably cost Clara 6 months' rent. His face was a study in intense focus, but beneath the sharpness of his eyes, a faint, deep sorrow was perpetually masked. He didn't speak to Clara as he approached the enormous glass desk, but his presence made the air pressure drop. He stopped, not looking at her, but at the holographic display resting beside his state-of-the-art laptop. He stabbed a finger at the screen, his voice cutting through the quiet like a whip crack against glass. "You missed a crucial detail, Clara. That contract is incomplete. I expect perfection, or this partnership is over. Is that clear?" The words hit Clara not with surprise, but with a familiar, manufactured dread. She lowered her head instantly. "Yes, Mr. Reid, perfectly clear." The interaction was brief, cold, and entirely staged. But it was not private. On the adjacent balcony of the penthouse next door, a woman named Chloe was recording a high-gloss, sponsored lifestyle segment for her social media channel. Chloe, in a perfectly white athleisure outfit and carrying a new designer handbag, was the embodiment of entitled judgment. She loved finding content, and the moment she heard the clipped, authoritative tone from Eli, she pivoted her phone camera. Her bored expression dissolved into a smug, wide-eyed performance. She zoomed in, capturing the contrast, the dominant black man in the expensive suit, and the bowed, subservient white woman in the maid uniform. Chloe lowered her voice to a theatrical whisper, leaning into her microphone as if delivering classified intel. "Oh my God, you guys. Look at this. I am literally witnessing abuse. The black CEO is aggressively shaming his poor white maid over something minor. Did you hear that? Perfection or this partnership is over. This is unbelievable classism. I am absolutely live streaming this. We have to cancel him. Right now." Chloe ended her segment, her lips curling into a triumphant, self-righteous sneer. She had her viral gold. Inside the glass cage, Clara dared to raise her gaze just as Eli turned away. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, a shared moment of deep, complicated understanding that belied the dramatic charade they had just performed. But the public, watching Chloe's viral clip, saw only the shame and the power dynamic. Hours later, the sun had set on the high-rise and Clara was finally back on solid ground. The sound of the key turning in the lock of her worn, third-floor apartment felt like the world's heaviest sigh. The air here was warm and smelled of old carpet and simmering tomato sauce, a comfort utterly lacking in the minimalist perfection of the penthouse. 8-year-old Lily looked up from her homework at the kitchen table, her eyes bright and hopeful. "Mom, you're home." "I'm home, sweetie." Clara forced a smile, but her hand was already trembling. She pulled the phone from her pocket and saw the first dozen missed calls from Marcus, Eli's chief of staff, and then the inevitable. 1,000 comments, 50 hate messages, and 200,000 views on a clip titled, "Black CEO Rips Maid to Tears Over a Speck of Dust." The tension was now palpable, no longer just a fear, but a creeping, immediate threat to the small, stable life she had worked so desperately to build. She quickly threw the phone onto the counter, pretending not to notice. She knew the storm had just begun. The light filtering through the cheap blinds of the tiny, shared apartment complex was dusty and weak. 10 years earlier, this was Eli Reid's life. Not the sleek glass tower, but a narrow, perpetually cold room smelling faintly of ramen and desperation. He was a pre-med student, brilliant but resource-poor, juggling textbooks with the harsh reality of affording specialized medication for his severe, inherited allergies. Every day was a calculation, a precise budget of calories and chemical stability. The calculation failed him completely on a raw November afternoon. Eli was alone when the familiar tightness started, but this time it escalated with terrifying speed. His throat closed, air became a thick, useless sludge, and panic, cold, overwhelming panic, seized him. He fumbled for his auto-injector, but it was empty, its contents long expired because he couldn't afford the refill. He knew he had minutes. He crawled, dragging his useless legs across the grimy linoleum floor of the hallway, rasping out a sound that was less a cry and more the painful scrape of a desperate animal. His vision tunneled. He begged, a pathetic, unintelligible croak, hoping one of his unseen neighbors would hear and care enough to call an ambulance or, better yet, get him to the free clinic just blocks away. But the shared living space was indifferent, accustomed to the low-level noise of people struggling. Then, a sound broke through the roaring in his ears. The weary jingle of keys and the tired sigh of someone whose shift had just ended. It was Clara, then a stranger, just arriving home after working the evening shift at a diner, her hands smelling faintly of grease and cleaning fluid. Her eyes, usually heavy with fatigue, snapped wide with horror when she saw Eli's cyanotic face and violent tremors. Clara didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions about insurance or blame him for not being prepared. She saw a dying man. She dove into her purse, tearing out the crumpled, hard-earned bills, $100, all the cash she had for groceries to last her and Lily until payday. It was a massive sum, a necessary lifeline for them, but she didn't even think twice. She flagged down the first cab she saw, shoved the money at the driver, and physically dragged Eli, heavy and seizing, into the backseat, barking the clinic's address. She stayed in the tiny, buzzing waiting room, holding his pale, clammy hand until the doctors stabilized him and the terror had passed. As the adrenaline wore off, the reality of her own sacrifice hit. Her daughter would eat canned beans and rice for the rest of the week. Eli finally opened his eyes, blurred and weak, but alive. He looked at the stranger holding his hand, seeing not a maid or a peer, but a guardian angel. His voice was a whisper, thick with drugs and conviction. I owe you my life. When I make it big, I will find you and repay this debt. I swear it. Clara simply squeezed his hand, her own eyes filled with a quiet dignity. You just get better, kid. That's all the repayment I need. She left shortly after, fading back into her life of endless struggle, convinced he would forget her the moment he stepped out of the hospital. Back in the present, the memory of that raw humility hit Eli with the force of a physical blow. He was staring at the viral video on Marcus's phone, Chloe's sneering face, the inflammatory title. Racist rant. CEO shames Maid who saved his life, allegedly. The irony was a dagger. He, the man who had been given a second chance, was being destroyed by a lie that masked his honorable, years-long effort to repay the debt that started everything. Marcus was frantically pacing the expensive carpet. Eli, the board is panicking. Ascension Tech stock is down 3 points. We have to issue a statement. We need to cut her loose now, before the media starts asking why you have a live-in maid in a penthouse apartment anyway. Eli ignored his chief of staff. He looked at the screen, his own face reflected in the glass, his jaw tight. The viral video was a disaster, not because it exposed him to public shame, but because it threatened to destroy Clara's quiet, secure future, the very future he had sworn to provide. The time for the secret reveal was being violently stripped from him, and the anger that flared in his chest was not about his stock price, but about the world's entitlement threatening his honor. He clenched his fist. He would not let them win. The moment Chloe's clip hit 1 million views, it was no longer a joke. It became a cultural flashpoint, and Chloe was basking in the synthetic glow of digital victimhood. She appeared on a daytime talk show, framed in soft light, her voice trembling dramatically as she described the trauma of witnessing such blatant class aggression. It's not enough to be a billionaire, folks, Chloe sniffled into the camera. You have to be cruel. This poor maid, Clara, was clearly intimidated. I just want justice for the working class who are being exploited by these elite tech titans. Her performance was flawless, leveraging every ounce of societal friction for personal gain. Back in the real world, the consequences were brutal and immediate. Eli's chief of staff, Marcus, looked physically ill as he took the call. Clara, it's done. The board voted, 7-1. They've cited reputational risk and security concerns. They're forcing Eli's hand. Effective immediately, your services, your cleaning services, are terminated. Marcus swallowed hard. He's genuinely sorry, Clara. He tried to fight it, but the stock, it plummeted. Clara didn't argue. She just heard the cold, metallic clang of the door slamming shut on the future she had thought was finally safe. She wasn't angry at Eli, but at the sheer, overwhelming power of a well-placed lie. She felt utterly isolated, the target of millions of angry strangers who knew nothing of her life, nothing of her past, and nothing of the life she had saved. The isolation became public humiliation later that day. Clara had to take Lily to the corner store to buy a carton of milk. As she walked down the snack aisle, a woman with a large phone recognized her from Chloe's amplified clips. The woman immediately lowered her phone and started recording. Hey, aren't you the maid? The one that was trying to shake down the CEO? The woman sneered, her voice carrying aggressively across the quiet store. You should be ashamed. Your boss was too nice. Trying to blackmail him after he gave you a job. You're an abusive gold digger, you deserve to be fired. Lily, who had been innocently reading the nutrition label on a cereal box, froze. Her face crumbled as she saw the sheer, raw hatred aimed at her mother. Clara grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her toward the checkout, her quiet dignity battling the crushing need to disappear. She paid for the milk, ignoring the whispers and the flash of the camera, but the trauma had landed. Lily was crying silently into her mother's jacket the entire walk home. Meanwhile, back in the penthouse, Marcus was raging quietly to Eli. I saw the security feed. Chloe was filming from her balcony. She edited the sound. She turned your professional warning about the foundation contract into a verbal assault on the cleaning job. It's pure malice. Eli, defeated and staring out at the city he had conquered, nodded. It doesn't matter what the truth is, Marcus. They've already decided the narrative. But Marcus had seen the quiet injustice. He saw the cold calculation of the antagonist and the weary honesty of Clara. Without telling Eli, Marcus made a single, anonymous call to a highly investigative, but small, independent online journalist. I have a lead on the Ascension tech scandal, he whispered into the phone. The story you're reading? It's all based on one woman's lie. The CEO didn't fire the maid for cleaning. It was about a 6-figure contract, and the maid isn't the victim they think she is. She's something else entirely. He had become Clara and Eli's silent, powerful ally, ensuring a single lifeline to the truth existed. The next morning, Chloe, still riding her wave of notoriety, was confident the humiliation was complete. She noticed a moving van outside Clara's old building. Seeing her chance for a final, theatrical takedown, Chloe called the police non-emergency line. Her voice dripped with false concern. Yes, hello, I need to report a theft. It's my cleaning lady, the one from the viral video, Clara Jenkins. I just realized some antique cufflinks and a bespoke diamond bracelet are missing. I'm positive she grabbed them on her last day. She's moving out right now, so you better hurry. The lie was bold, precise, and potentially devastating. Clara was packing Lily's favorite teddy bear when the 2 uniformed officers knocked sharply on the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she looked at Lily, whose small hands were trembling. The victim was gone. The protector was all that remained. Clara stood up straight, facing the door. She would not hide, and she would not let this entitlement win. She took a deep, steadying breath, preparing for the fight of her life. The heavy oak door of the precinct interview room felt like the final nail in the coffin of Clara's dignity. The police investigation into Chloe's false theft report was a humiliation, a series of pointless questions about items she'd never seen. Lily was thankfully with a neighbor, but the fear had settled deep in Clara's bones. As she finally walked out, the late afternoon sun felt cold on her face. She hadn't just lost a job, she was now legally tainted by a wealthy liar. It was a crushing, false defeat. Her phone buzzed, displaying a burner number. The message was simple: Blue Line Cafe, 6 p.m. Table in the back. Come alone. Clara arrived at the small, unassuming coffee shop, the smell of stale coffee mixing with old vinyl. Eli Reid was already there, looking impossibly out of place in a plain black hoodie and jeans, his intensity still radiating even in casual clothes. He looked ravaged, the exhaustion of fighting his board clearly etched on his face. "Clara, thank you for coming," he said, his voice low and devoid of the CEO authority he'd worn in the penthouse. "I'm so sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry about Chloe, about the board, and about the police." Clara shook her head, tears blurring her vision, but not of sadness, of pure frustration. "They won, Eli. She won. I lost the job, I was humiliated in front of my daughter, and I nearly got arrested because one bored, entitled woman decided my life was content." She leaned forward, her voice raw. "Your repayment was the best thing that ever happened to us, and now the world has taken it away because of a lie." The twist revelation came when Eli reached into his hoodie pocket and slid a single, thick manila envelope across the table. "You haven't lost anything, Clara. You just lost the facade," Eli said, pushing the envelope toward her. "When I told you the board terminated your services, I wasn't lying. They terminated your role as house manager. But that wasn't your real job." Clara opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document titled, Operating Agreement and Executive Directorship for the Lighthouse Foundation. She scanned the clauses, her eyes widening with impossible speed. The salary listed was not hourly wage, but a high six-figure annual retainer. The crucial detail he'd criticized in Chapter 1 wasn't a speck of dust. It was a crucial tax compliance clause he needed her to fix before the official launch. The Maid uniform was his idea. A way to keep her profile completely undetectable, protecting her and the Foundation's assets from prying eyes until the official unveiling. Eli placed his hand over hers. "I wasn't paying you to clean, Clara. I was paying you to run my life's work. The board blocked our partnership launch, but they can't block the Foundation itself." "Not yet." Clara looked up, the tears now drying in a flash of fiery determination. The victim mentality vanished entirely. She wasn't just a survivor anymore, she was a strategic partner with an enormous stake in this fight. She saw the evidence, the leverage, and the path forward. "The lie has already gone viral," Clara stated, her voice hardening, suddenly commanding the space. She tapped the document. "We stop trying to hide. You don't fire me, Eli. I quit the cleaning facade. We use this spotlight she created. We give the world the real story, but we do it on our terms. We turn Chloe's public shame into the lighthouse's launch stage." Eli stared at her, seeing the same fierce, protective fire in her eyes that he'd seen 10 years ago when she shoved him into that cab. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. The game was no longer defense, it was offense. The long game had begun. Clara's days were no longer marked by the faint scent of lemon polish and the endless pursuit of an invisible shine. They were now filled with the sharp, acidic smell of freshly printed legal briefs and the metallic clinking of Marcus's coffee cup during late-night strategy meetings. The cleaning uniform was relegated to the back of the closet, replaced by sharp, professional blouses and the focus of a woman playing for the highest stakes. Eli and Marcus worked meticulously, ensuring every piece of the puzzle was perfectly placed. Marcus began subtly shifting the media narrative. He didn't defend Eli, he merely leaked vague, yet enticing, breadcrumbs to obscure online forums. The posts hinted at an upcoming, massive, expose from Ascension Tech, making the public assume Eli was preparing a costly libel suit against Clara, whom the public still believed was the wronged maid. This strategic misdirection was designed to keep the audience, and more importantly, Chloe, hooked on the scandal, ensuring maximum viewership for the ultimate reveal. Meanwhile, Chloe was living in a bubble of self-congratulation. She threw a lavish, overly decorated afternoon tea party at her penthouse, inviting only the most socially influential, and equally judgmental, neighbors. The sound of her high, triumphant laughter spilled across the balconies, a grating sound that mocked the careful silence of Clara's preparations. Honestly, girls, it was too easy. Chloe simpered, sipping champagne from a flute while detailing the police report she had filed. The sheer audacity of that woman, trying to cling on after she was caught in a lie. I tell you, Eli Reid is grateful. I saved him from a massive PR headache. I cleaned up his trash for him. Her arrogance was a thick, syrupy thing, and she truly believed she had orchestrated the perfect, permanent removal of both Eli's problem and his mysterious maid. Clara, ignoring the buzzing hive of Chloe's celebration, sat with Lily late one evening, going over printed photos of the Lighthouse Foundation's first planned veteran housing development. Lily, now seeing her mother focused and determined, stopped flinching at the sight of the viral video clip. Why did you have to pretend to be the maid, Mom? Lily asked, tracing the outline of a blueprint. Clara smiled, a genuine, strong smile that erased the fatigue of her past life. Because, sweetie, sometimes people only see what they expect to see. And if they expect to see a maid, they don't bother to look close enough to see an executive director. That's how we find out who's really watching. The air in the grand ballroom of the Sterling Hotel was thick with the scent of lilies and high-end ambition. This was the Ascension Gala, Eli Reid's annual networking spectacle, now transformed into the stage for a forced corporate confrontation. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light over hundreds of investors, board members, and socialites, all buzzing about the single topic that dominated the city: the CEO and his maid. Chloe arrived with the calculated drama of a starlet. Dressed in a loud, emerald green gown and trailing a cheap perfume that seemed to aggressively cling to the air, she was focused only on the cameras flashing at the velvet ropes. She saw herself as the guest of honor, the woman who had brought a titan to his knees. She immediately began giving sound bites to the reporters crowded at the entrance, painting herself as the ethical crusader. Inside, Chloe spotted Eli and Marcus near a champagne fountain, deep in conversation. She swept over, her high heels clicking aggressively on the polished floor, a sound that drew glances. She leaned in, her voice dripping with condescension and triumph. Well, Eli, darling. I see the bad press hasn't killed your appetite for expensive bubbly, Chloe purred, checking her diamond watch pointedly. I hear you finally got rid of that mess of a maid. Good for business. You know, sometimes you just have to take out the trash before it contaminates the whole block. Eli merely gave her a look so cold it seemed to freeze the air around them. Your concern is duly noted, Chloe. He didn't elaborate, didn't react, simply offering an empty stare that frustrated her total need for confirmation. Just then, a hush fell near the main entrance. A wave of awe, not recognition, rippled through the crowd. Clara entered, and the transformation was total and absolute. Gone was the worn, practical uniform. She wore a simple, beautifully cut midnight blue gown that flowed like water, an outfit that spoke not of wealth, but of quiet authority and inherent dignity. Her posture was straight, her expression composed, and she was escorted not by her secret benefactor, but by Mr. Harrington, the aging, respected chairman of the Ascension Board, the man who had personally cast the decisive vote to fire the maid. Chloe froze mid-sip of her champagne. Her sneer dissolved into confusion. Is that the fired maid? She whispered, loud enough for a small knot of people to hear. She quickly recovered, her voice rising in outrage. Trying to crash the party? Security. This woman is a trespasser. She's the one who was just detained for theft. The room went silent, the tension snapping taut like a bowstring. Every eye turned to Clara, who stopped at the entrance to the main seating area, unflinching under Chloe's sudden, shrill attack. Eli, calm and utterly controlled, walked away from Chloe and onto the elevated stage. A massive LED screen glowed behind him. He waited until the last cough had subsided, holding the room in a state of agonizing anticipation. Ladies and gentlemen, Eli's voice boomed, deep and resonant. We are here tonight for the Ascension Gala, but I understand there is a small matter of viral scandal that needs addressing first. He paused, his eyes sweeping over the crowd until they landed on Chloe, whose face was now a mask of smug satisfaction. I want to resolve the viral controversy surrounding my former employee, Clara Jenkins. Tonight, the truth about that employee, and about the meaning of shame, will be revealed. He signaled to Marcus, who nodded from his post near the tech booth. The room's lights dimmed further, leaving only the stage and the immense, now blazing screen. The grand setup was complete. Chloe was exactly where they wanted her, in the front row, spotlighted by her own arrogance, ready to witness the spectacular collapse of her entire performance. Eli turned, pointing to the massive LED screen behind him. Instantly, the grainy, distorted clip Chloe had posted went live, playing the familiar, brief moment of Eli's perceived rage. Then, without a moment's pause, the screen switched to the high-resolution, full-context surveillance footage from the penthouse. The audience watched as Eli pointed not at a speck of dust, but at the digital file on his desk. The audio was clear. He was discussing a legal document, a partnership, and the expectation of perfection in an agreement, not in a cleaning job. A low, stunned murmur swept through the ballroom. Before the confusion could solidify, the image on the screen changed again. It displayed the operating agreement for the Lighthouse Foundation, the nonprofit organization focused on veteran family support. The text at the top of the document, huge and impossible to ignore, read, Executive Director, Clara Jenkins. Below it was the annual salary, a staggering six-figure sum, far removed from a maid's wage. Chloe finally erupted. Her face was turning a sickly white, her eyes wide with terror and denial. She shoved past a waiter, screaming, "It's a fake. They're fabricating evidence. She's an imposter. She was working as a maid. Everyone saw it." Security immediately closed in, but Eli waved them back, wanting the confrontation to play out. Clara, calm and elegant, stepped forward to the mic, taking her place beside Eli. Her voice, once soft and fearful, was now commanding, projecting an authority that silenced the room instantly. "I was working as a house manager," Clara corrected coolly, looking directly at Chloe. "And yes, for 3 months, my primary duty was to maintain the penthouse. It was a loyalty test." Eli needed to know that even with the immediate promise of millions through the foundation, I wouldn't forget my commitment to honest, difficult work. He needed to ensure I wasn't just chasing the paycheck. The audience gasped, understanding the depths of the deception. The humiliation was not for the maid, but for the onlookers who had judged her. The climax twist was then delivered by Eli. He held up a small, weathered photograph, the one Marcus had saved from his personal effects. It was a blurry shot of a young, sick Eli, lying in a hospital bed, holding the hand of a tired, youthful Clara. Clara didn't just pass a loyalty test for a job, Eli announced, his voice thick with genuine emotion, his eyes glued to the photograph. 10 years ago, I was a broke, dying student. She was a single mother who spent the only cash she had, the $100 she needed for groceries, to get me to the ER when I was in anaphylactic shock. She saved my life. That $100 paid for the emergency visit that allowed me to live long enough to launch Ascension Tech." He paused, letting the weight of the debt, the magnitude of the sacrifice, settle over the silent, shocked room. "The contract she refused to complete," Eli continued, his voice ringing with finality, "was not for her salary. It was the document granting her, in addition to the directorship, a 5% equity stake in Ascension Tech. A stake worth almost $90 million. She wasn't a maid earning $20 an hour. She was the reason this company exists. She is a founder of the Lighthouse Foundation." Chloe, standing rigid near the front, finally broke. Her face was contorted into a mask of pure, devastating regret. The sight of the photograph and the mention of the impossible financial value shattered her reality. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a desperate, choked sound came out. This was Marcus's moment. The silent Ali stepped forward and spoke into a handheld mic. He didn't address Chloe, he addressed the police department. "Officers, I'd like to present the full, unedited security camera footage, along with this signed affidavit, concerning the false police report filed yesterday by Ms. Chloe, detailing the alleged theft of a diamond bracelet and cufflinks. The evidence shows Ms. Chloe's claims were completely fabricated to publicly shame and endanger an innocent woman. The camera feed from Marcus's station immediately cut to a live screen showing Chloe's face, pale and stricken. Two uniformed officers, who had been strategically placed by the entrance as part of the setup, immediately walked toward her. Chloe's entitled sneer was gone, replaced by a horrifying realization of her complete, self-engineered ruin. She stumbled backward, tears finally flowing, not of victimhood, but of absolute despair, as the flash of the press cameras became the final, unforgiving white light of her public demise. Eli and Clara watched, standing tall together, as justice served its killing blow. The arrest of Chloe was the chaotic, explosive finale the crowd needed. As the police led her away, her face wet with humiliated tears, the applause finally broke out, not the polite clap of the rich, but a genuine, thundering ovation of respect for Eli and Clara. Eli's stock price immediately corrected itself, then soared, riding the wave of positive news coverage about his integrity and the massive Lighthouse Foundation launch. Clara, now executive director and a significant stakeholder, showed her true character in the aftermath. She ensured that the two security guards who had treated her with quiet respect during her Maid disguise received large, anonymous bonuses. She set up a scholarship fund within the foundation for their children. She was firm with the board, demanding immediate reform on how they handled internal complaints, but she was never vindictive. Her focus remained forward, on the struggling families she was now dedicated to serving. She gave a high-profile interview later that week, sitting in front of the logo of the Lighthouse Foundation. She wasn't wearing a suit, but a simple, elegant dress, maintaining her aura of humble authority. "I was never ashamed of the work I did as a maid," Clara stated calmly into the camera. "It was honest work that put food on my daughter's table. The shame belongs only to those who looked at my uniform and decided my worth." The lesson here is simple. Never judge a book by its cover, and never, ever underestimate the person who holds the door open for you. 5 years had passed, and the whirlwind of scandal and revelation had settled into legacy. Chloe's karma was complete and absolute. Her libel charges and the public scrutiny had destroyed her husband's career and their finances. She was forced to take a job far below her former station, ironically as a low-paid service worker at a budget motel on the city's outskirts. She was captured on a slow, rainy Tuesday, sighing dramatically over a cleaning cart, complaining bitterly to a coworker about the unfairness of the world, and still blaming Eli and Clara for her problems. She had been given the chance to learn humility, but had only learned how to resent her new reality. Clara Jenkins, however, was thriving. Lily, now a confident teenager, sat proudly in the front row of the University of Chicago auditorium as her mother approached the podium. The university's new wing, dedicated to veteran studies, was funded entirely by Eli's donations through the Lighthouse Foundation. Clara, radiant and composed, her eyes holding the deep, satisfied calm of a life hard won, was introduced to thunderous applause. She was now known nationally as the president of the Lighthouse Foundation, a powerful, philanthropic force. She smiled at the sea of eager graduates. 10 years ago, I didn't have a career. I had a debt to pay, a life debt to my daughter, Lily, to give her a secure future. 5 years ago, I learned that a different debt, a life saved, was repaid to me 1,000 times over, not in charity, but in partnership. Clara finished her speech, her voice rising to a powerful final statement as she looked straight into the camera lens, speaking to anyone who had ever felt judged or invisible. The true debt in life isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in integrity, compassion, and the choices you make when no one is watching. Never judge the value of a person by the uniform they wear today, because you never know what life they may have saved yesterday. She stepped back, the message resonating, a final, beautiful lesson delivered by the woman who had traded $100 for an empire, forever proving that true wealth lies not in what you own, but in who you choose to save.